Hi, everyone. Happy Monday. It is Monday, February 15th, 2016 at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and this is Admissions Live. I'm your host, Nicole Lentini. On today's live broadcast, we're talking about recruitment and technology. Technology impacts both the day-to-day responsibilities on long-term work planning of counselors in high schools and college admission offices across the country and around the globe. While technological disruptions can bring challenges, this episode will focus on how technology can help you be better at your job. I'm excited to speak with Brian Niles, founder and Chief Evangelist of TargetX. We'll be discussing how technology is changing the world of recruitment, diving deeper into what technologies institutions are embracing, as well as uses of technology that we may still be stumbling over. Look forward to learning how to use technology to be more effective in your recruitment efforts. But let's first give a shout out to the sponsors that make today's broadcast possible. Admissions Live is part of the Higher Ed Live network, offering viewers direct access to the best and brightest minds in education. Live webcasts allow viewers to share knowledge and participate in discussions around the most important issues in the industry. Today's live viewing experience is powered by Maestro, the premier marketing tech platform for broadcasters. All episodes of Admissions Live are free and accessible in the video archives at higheredlive.com and in podcast format on iTunes. Today's episode is made possible by Chegg Enrollment Services. Oops, here we go. Chegg Enrollment Services connects to nearly 80% of college-bound students researching schools across the web with colleges and universities who are trying to reach them. Using an online platform that includes over 10 of the most popular college search sites online, Chegg can help you save over 90% on the cost of traditional methods for generating your inquiry pool. Email outreach@chegg.com to schedule a free consultation. Higher Ed Live is produced by M. Stoner, a marketing and communications firm that works with education institutions on branding, strategy, web design, and more. Your program pages are some of the most market critical on your website, and your faculty has expertise that can provide a critical content pool to raise the prominence of your institution. Do you have a content strategy to leverage these two important resources? Register now for M. Stoner's free 2-part webinar series. We're tweeting out a link now where you can learn more and sign up. So without further ado, I'm very excited to welcome Brian. As I mentioned, Brian is a founder and Chief Evangelist of TargetX, a well-respected voice of change in an industry at its tipping point, struggling to be more effective and efficient. And I will not steal all the thunder on your bio. Brian, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, please?
I have the coolest title, that's what I'm told, Chief Evangelist.
I love it.
Thanks, Nicole. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on Higher Ed Live. Really glad to be here. And I started TargetX about 17 years ago as an email marketing company. But prior to that, working in higher education, worked at 2 institutions, both at the undergrad and the graduate level, as admissions director at LaSalle University was my last stop, and started TargetX. And 17 years later, I'm still here. So
fantastic. Yeah, well, you've had such a cool history in higher education, and I will admit I was very excited to have you on as well, because a few years ago, just to share with the viewers, I got to connect with you at UB Tech down in Orlando, Florida, and I got a copy of your book, Overthrowing Dead Culture, a vision to change the world of college recruiting, and I loved it. I'm such a admissions and technology nerd, and I was all about it. And you put forth some really, really great kind of thoughts centered around the way to change this world of recruiting as we know it. So I'm so excited that you're there with TargetX, and you guys are such forward thinkers with the way we can shake up this industry.
Well, thanks so much, Nicole. We've had a lot of help, a lot of good friends and colleagues help write that book, and of course helped hundreds of colleges over the past 17 years improve their recruitment and now retention and advancement. So yeah, it's been a great ride so far. So having a good time.
Awesome.
Love this industry. Obviously, it's the industry I grew up in. So
definitely. And it's a fascinating one at that. Hard to really explain to those that aren't in the higher education industry exactly how much things can change and grow. And oh my gosh, it's every time you think you have a sense of the way that the industry is moving, it seems to shift on you. So I'm glad that you're really cognizant of that broader spectrum of how education is moving forward.
Yeah, and it's interesting is that while things change, some things stay the same, and we're still working hard at improving things. I still, I mean, thank you for reading the book again. I still get people buying the book and reading it. We have some of our colleges in the U.S. who are using it for their staff retreats in the summer, and that's fascinating. I mean, it's 5 years old, but even some of the points in there, I guess, are still helping colleges adjust and improve and become more successful. So I'm blessed that people are reading it and enjoying it and getting some use out of it, including yourself. So thank you.
Definitely, yeah. Well, and we were joking a little bit before the live broadcast that there's some kind of joking references to MySpace there, yes, which even at that point in time was kind of on its way out. But I think the message that you put up there stays the same, and I think we'll even see some of it weaving into the show today. So I encourage everybody to check it out. But I think the broader concepts of storytelling are so important, and storytelling and really strong leadership and really how you are authentic in your voice can carry over no matter what you're talking about. So
you're absolutely right. I mean, we are talking about technology and recruiting today, but it's really the story. It's not the technology. It's I think you had even taken a picture of part of the book and posted it on Twitter. I saw, and about your institutional DNA, which is a phrase that I get from one of my friends and colleagues, Jeff Colley at Render Experiences. He always uses that phrase when he works with colleges and trying to understand what makes them so unique, because it doesn't matter what technology, whether it's MySpace or Facebook, or you were telling me about Peach or whatever, yep, social network or CRM, TargetX being a CRM company today, that they utilize. If they can't tell their story and they can't differentiate themselves, that's not going to be very helpful for them. I have a 16-year-old in the house, and Sarah, my daughter, is beginning the college search process. I have a 23-year-old that went through it already, but now I'm knee deep in it again and seeing what she's receiving in the mail. And I even have her, I brought her a little box of mailings that she gets from colleges with me here, and the emails that she gets and the stories she tells me from the people she meets at her high school, and she's going to be visiting colleges soon. It's really kind of fascinating to see from that perspective. I took her to a college fair, a national college fair last fall, and I walked in the room thinking, oh, it must be so different now. Wow, no different at all, except they had scanners, I guess. This is the only thing, like card scanners at each table, but no different from 1990 when I started doing those college fairs. So what are you going to do? Some things never change, but it's all the story that matters. Yeah.
It's so true. And yeah, I think we keep trying to throw new things in there, but ultimately the fairs look pretty similar. I've been at admissions almost 10 years now, and not that much has changed except, like you said, scanners, and maybe some more schools have some iPads, but other than that, it's pretty standard. Yeah. So actually that kind of moves nicely into my first question, which I really kind of want to pose as sort of big picture to lead us into this conversation, is what do you consider the most far-reaching impactful technological changes to the world of recruiting in the time that you've been in this?
I think anyone could very easily say the web, the internet. I think in general, everybody at TargetX would want me to say CRM. That's changed everything. No, and it has, and we'll talk about that. But I think that fundamentally, the biggest change that I've seen since I've been doing this, and I started this in actually 1989, is email. And I know that sounds silly for a lot of people going, oh, kids today, they don't read email. Well, they do when they're interested and they're paying attention, but they don't use it the way that my age group does. And it's obviously very different in that way, but it gave us the first technology, the first set of tools for real engagement. I mean, before that, we were relying on much more travel, I think, than colleges do today. So visiting high schools and setting up receptions, like they still do that, but not, from what I can tell, not nearly as much as we used to. And we'd send mailings. I mean, as I said, here's the box of poor Sarah's letters that she's getting, search letters. And we can talk about old technology and how this is maybe not very effective, but and old tools. And then calling, we used the phone, and believe it or not, back in the early 90s, I couldn't get a kid on the phone then either. It really hasn't changed a whole lot. Mom and dad were, screening the calls and all of that. But email gave us the chance to actually have that back and forth interaction. And the other interesting thing that it did is it put the control more in the students' hands. They could delete it, they could unsubscribe from it, and you could learn from that as well. So I think that became our first real engagement tool, not the last one, and not the last one going forward. There will be new ones, but one that I think had a fundamental change to how we recruit students.
Awesome. Well, that's really building it into the big scale of things, right? I mean, it's, trying to get there. We go. That's back on me. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that with the advent of the internet have come our way, and you can break it down into itty bitty programs and apps and all of these, but that really is, I think, that there's been a massive shift happening about. I thought it was interesting what you said in your book. You actually kind of wrapped into this conversation that we're having, that with the advent of the internet, at first everybody just kind of moved what they were doing in print already onto the internet instead of thinking differently about it. And I think that's kind of a bigger theme we can see throughout this show, is sort of we need to think more carefully about how we're using these tools and using them effectively versus just being on them and existing on them. And I think even your college fair note that you mentioned earlier kind of ties into that. Instead of just doing the same thing we're doing and moving the platform, actually changing the way that we're utilizing that space.
Yeah, and I think the web has been an area where colleges lately have gotten better at it. I do applaud them, and I think firms like M. Stoner and others that have really stepped up, bringing colleges up to date with more effective use of their web, instead of making it brochureware, making it actually much more focused, much more tailored to a journey throughout the site. And I always use that phrase, that student journey. And I think that's the part that colleges need to pay more attention to, is what is that student's journey from the point where they're searching to the point where they're enrolling and then continuing on. And yeah, one of those things that colleges, and I guess all the technology up until recently had, is that the online application. Here is something that should have fundamentally changed over the past couple of years as we saw the growth of students' use of mobile devices, and yet all the online application tools didn't. Last year, Rufflin and Olevitz did a study that said 67% of the students that year completed some form of their online application on a mobile device, and yet not one application, and I'll put a plug in, before TargetX was released last year in July, not one of them was designed for a mobile experience. And we saw that obviously as an opportunity at TargetX to build a better online application. Now, a student's not writing their essays on their cell phone and all that, not uploading things necessarily from there, but they're sitting in study hall, they're on the bus, they're waiting for the game to begin, whatever it may be, they've got little bits of time. Can they complete little pieces of information? And yet these applications are just not designed for that to happen on a mobile device. And that's an experience. I think if we start studying the students, I have this luxury again, 16-year-old in the house, so I can actually watch it in real time, and I love doing that. But I think if we as admissions professionals study what we put in front of students, how they experience our website, our online forms, our Facebook page, our other mobile tools, our online application, what is it like, and what roadblocks are we putting in their way, and what opportunities can we have to further optimize the presentation of our story and then the interaction with those students? Schools are going to be much more successful, and we're going to help those students get to their point of success as well.
Definitely. Well, and I mean, you are without a doubt lucky to have a case study right in front of you in your house. But I think we can still take advantage of that with the tools that we're using to connect with our students. We actually, my last episode, we were talking about social listening, and that's a really great tool to see, if students are asking questions throughout your application process, maybe you should take a step back and realize that this is a point of pain through the process for them at this point. Why is it so difficult? How can we make it easier? How can we do better in that sense? Instead of just kind of thinking of it as a blip on the radar, I think we should be paying more attention to that. So even if we don't have a high school student in our home, we still have the ability to be more aware of this.
Absolutely. I think social listening is one of those areas where colleges could be improving. It's an area that, and I think higher education is challenged by its structure as well. One of the challenges I think that we experience with working with colleges, universities, is that siloed nature of the institution. And who owns the social experience, the social story and engagement at an institution? Is it the admissions office? Is it some central marketing office? And then different size schools have different ways of working around it. Clemson can have a whole social listening studio at their university. It's fascinating, by the way. If you want to see something, is Google Clemson University Social Studio. Just really interesting things they're doing with some tools out there. Where other institutions, there's just a student a new admissions council that just graduated, and they've just been given the responsibility of just pay attention attention and see what happens. We need to get better at that, but I think also at the heart of it, the structure of institutions are still, that siloed nature are making it a little bit clumsy. So there's one area we could be improving, absolutely. Our use of social tools, our use of social engagement, and that has to begin with listening as well.
Definitely. And I think you made a really great point of kind of some offices just kind of give it to the new person or give it to the young person who sort of is like, oh, you get Twitter, you can do it, or and it's bigger than that. It really is. It's understanding the strategy behind it. It's understanding really the underlying conversations that are happening in the industry. There's so much more to it. And like you said, social listening is something that in concept is easy enough to say you can do, but in reality, there's a lot more to it, and really paying attention to kind of the vibe of your institution and of the, like I said, of the industry as a whole. So that's a great point.
And it can also change, it can help and change the way, we affect yield and conversion rates. I tell anybody who asks me today, don't you want to be an admissions director again? Like, no, not right now. No, this would be the worst time. It used to be so predictable, conversion rates, and it was fairly easy compared to today. Today it's all over the place, as we all know, in admissions. But one of those areas that we've always focused on is those yield of admitted students. And we have a private social mobile tool called Schools app, where students can actually interact with each other. And the fascinating part about that is that we also can see what they're saying in the aggregate. So if we suddenly see in our word cloud, this is as an institution, started seeing our word cloud issues of, for example, financial aid, or being able to afford it, we can address that. We can be proactive of that. We also can see how engaged the students are on a higher level, and see which students are more or less likely to enroll based on how engaged they are in this social private network. That helps us drive our engagement, drives our activities with them, and really helps us improve that yield. One of the stats I'm fascinated by that our research team found is that if a student has engage with 9 or more people in this private social mobile network, they're 93% more likely to enroll at that institution. 93%, that's huge. That's a huge stat, and that's why I found this tool fascinating, to be able to put this in the hands of students. There's 5 million interactions happening between these 100 or so schools that are using it, and the students are very active, and that is going to help that one part of the funnel that as enrollment professionals we're always challenged by. We can decide, and I've always told colleges this, we have to remind them of this all the time. There's only one part of the enrollment funnel they have any control over, and that's whether they admit the student or not. The students have every other part of that funnel controlled, whether they want to inquire, whether they want to apply, and if they are admitted, whether they want to enroll. The college only can decide whether they can admit them or not. And that puts a lot of pressure, on the institution to try and get their arms around those areas that they don't have any control over. And this hopefully is helping them.
Yes, definitely. And I love that. I read that just the other day, that quote of, that's the only thing we can control. And it kind of, I've known it in the back of my mind, but it was sort of that, like, wow, that's really true. That's the only thing. And I've joked all the time that admissions is such a strange industry because we're pretty much at the whim of 18-year-olds, 17 and 18-year-olds, and their decisions.
Sobering. Very sobering.
Very much so, to really realize, they could decide to come here because it was a sunny day or a snowy day, or because they connected with one student who liked the same band as them. I mean, we have so little control over that, and that's absolutely true. And it's sobering is a very, very good, very apt word for it, because it really kind of makes you take a step back and go, okay, if that's how this is, what can we do? How can we be better? Which actually, first I want to mention to viewers, if you have any questions or any thoughts, or if you want to share great statistics like the ones that Brian's sharing, please use the Higher Ed Live hashtag. But it brings me to my next question, which is what kind of software and tools, and you talked a little bit about this with the web and a little bit with social, but what software and tools do you believe institutions are using most effectively right now?
I think that colleges, as I said, they're getting the web right. I think colleges are starting to get Well, starting to get email right, you would think after all these years, it would be much smoother than it is. I think social is an area where they can improve. And I think some of the newer tools, particularly texting, we went so many years of people saying, oh, I could never text students. They'd never accept the text from us. There are places certainly in the recruitment process where they could use that more effectively. I think you've got some really talented individuals in this space who are utilizing data more effectively. One of my first admissions deans, Scott Friedhoff, who's at the College of Worcester now. I mean, he's like I remember him throwing numbers at me, and I'm just overwhelmed by it. But he got it, and he's still doing that today. I think there's people out there that are doing really fascinating things with the data that's at their disposal, and be able to use that to make more effective decisions. I think the thing that colleges can continue to improve on, though, is starting to get rid of all the siloed tools. We talked about the siloed nature of higher education. I'm seeing more talented, more modern CIOs in higher education, and CIOs that are actually working with enrollment. They're not just out there dealing with their ERP upgrades and they're selecting a new LMS and dealing with Wi-Fi all over their campus. They're actually looking at some other areas where there's some improvements, particularly in efficiency, that can be found. I think about schools, Jonathan C. at Pepperdine and Jeff Schmidt at Towson University and Western Connecticut and Southern Connecticut. These are schools that are leading a new approach to that role as CIO, of seeing all the tools that institutions are using. We need to streamline it some more. I remember working with a school in Ohio, and I just asked them, what are all the tools that you use to recruit a student? And they just started listing them. Obviously, they said, well, we have a website, and we have a view book, and we send out search mailings, and then we send out emails, and oh yeah, we have an event manager over here, and we do this. And then they started listing them, and then they got to like 19, and I'd like, is that it? And they added one more. I'm like, okay, 20, that's enough. Let's stop there. I get it. You use a lot of different tools. And it actually was the beginning of why TargetX got into the CRM space 8 years ago. I had a vice president for enrollment from a school, client of ours, using our email tool from North Carolina, came up to our offices, and I walked in the conference room as sometimes I do, and I just said hi, introduced myself, thanked them for coming into the office, and I say, what is your pain point today? What can we try and solve for you? Because we're constantly building new products, new solutions. What's the thing that eats at you every day? And this was 8 years ago. He walked up to the whiteboard in the conference room, and he started drawing these circles. And he said, these are all the tools we use to recruit a student. And an email was there, TargetX was there back in those days, and their website and their online application and their search provider and all those kinds of things they had there. And he said, it seems like all my staff does all day is moving data between all these different vendors and tools. And he said, what I'd like to have happen is to get rid of that and have all the data stay in one place. And he said, so we can get back, I love this phrase, so we can get back to the job of recruiting students to this fine institution. And I love that phrase. I thought it was cool. I'm like, yes, that's exactly what admissions people are supposed to do. Interact and recruit those students personally. And yet they're moving data. And to me, that also highlighted the inefficiencies. Worked with a school actually in your state many years ago, and I was going around the room and I was asking people, what are they trying to solve? What can we help them with a CRM? And I got around the room, and this was a Monday afternoon, and the woman next to me, she was the last one. And I said, okay, you're it. You're the last one. What's your challenge today? And she says, well, we had our open house on Saturday, and my job today is to send out all the thank you for attending and sorry you couldn't make it, rescheduling and all that. And I said, so how long did that take you? And she said, well, I'm not done yet. And this is like 3 in the afternoon. Like, you're not done yet? She says, yeah, it takes me all day to do that because I've got to grab the data from Wufoo Forms over here and whatever over in the list that they printed out, and she had to, check off who was there. And she said, how will the CRM help me? And I said, well, the data is all going to stay in one place. We're going to use QR codes to check them in. And I said, when did you know this event was going to happen on Saturday? And she said, well, I guess about 6 months ago. I said, well, 6 months ago, you could have set up the automated emails to go out today, this morning, before you even woke up. You could have done it if you wanted to. I don't care. But it would have run itself and sent out the thank yous or sorry you didn't make it. And you could be doing something else today. And she was kind of blown away by that. It's just like, wow, I don't not have to move all this data around. I think that's a challenge that colleges still have today. They're still working on, is how to stop moving data. That's not what we're in business to do anymore. And now we have modern tools, TargetX being a Salesforce platform provider. We can keep everything on one system, and we can change the application instead of moving the data from one app to the next, just by keeping it in one CRM system. And I think that's what I'm seeing. I'm really excited about, because that's all about efficiency, and that's going to help with particularly really this decline in consumer confidence in higher education by helping us get these costs down and become much more efficient operations. Wow. Long answer to a simple question, right?
No, it's a fitting one. I mean, it's so true. And you kind of, I don't know if you saw my face sort of kind of react to what you were saying, because it struck a chord with, I mean, we're doing a lot of things here at my own institution, but we actually just had a great meeting with information systems with that department to kind of, they wanted to hear, what are your pain points? What things are keeping you from doing your job more efficiently? And a lot of it was that. And I love the way you worded it, of essentially we're just moving data around. But it's true, one of the things I shared was that we're using all these different systems, but they don't talk to each other in a way that's efficient. We have to actually take the data from this space and move it into this space and then translate it over here, and it takes chunks of time that it would be great to just see technology make that more seamless. And I think that there's great tools at our disposal. So many tools have been created to help us with these problems, but when you're having to hop from one to the other, it doesn't create any efficiency. It creates inefficiency, and then all of a sudden you find yourself trying to run merges and reports and things like that, when we could be making calls or connecting with our families in our own buildings that are here visiting. We could be doing so much more of a service to them if we weren't dealing with all these kind of woes having to do with technology.
That's right. It's absolutely true. Yeah, and it's not always going to be in the same place. I mean, we do still have to integrate with other solutions. Your sponsor here, Chegg, is a partner of TargetX. We integrate with their solutions to bring data in. Common App schools, bringing all that real-time data into the CRM. That's going to have to happen. But we have the tools and the technology to be able to do that today. We don't have to. I mean, some people still refer to the PSAT names as tape loads, because actually I do remember having to get the tape and take it up to the IT staff and load the tape onto the machine. Just completely aged myself. But even back then, we should have not been doing that, but we were. And now we can have that data flow nice and seamlessly into a system. Again, cut that delay of moving data, become much more efficient in utilizing our limited resources in the admissions staff more effectively. And the key there is engagement. Real-time data, and real-time is not really a thing. I get it. Every IT person will tell me that's not a real thing, but relatively, real-time data means real-time engagement. And that's what we have to do, because students expect immediate responses. We'll have folks from Bob Johnson, who does a lot of consulting work, particularly on email response rates and email content of colleges and universities, longtime friend of mine. He continually reminds me of how long it takes a college to even respond back to an inquiry form that's filled out on the website. I'm like, come on, that should just be automatic. We expect it as consumers. I fill out a form on a website, I go to my email, boom, there's the response. If colleges aren't doing that, there's no reason why. There's no reason why anymore. I think the other thing too is that we've gotten away from this idea that the cloud is evil and the cloud is insecure, and that's a big change that I've seen experienced just in the past couple of years. The idea that our data has to actually sit on a server underneath the IT director's desk up in some super secure part of campus, which really isn't secure anyways, and colleges have been guilty of not being good stewards of data more than many industries. A lot of the data breaches have occurred at colleges, universities, and that the idea that all these other industries have figured out that the cloud actually is more secure and more accessible. We can have access to that data wherever we are, even on our devices, and not have to VPN in and to wherever. And that's actually a good way to go. And it's that idea that colleges and universities are 5 to 10 years behind everybody else. I think that number is starting to shrink. I think we're starting to accept that tools like cloud-based solutions and things that you can access on a mobile device are going to be okay, and we can move on to other things. So.
Yeah, and well, you're so seamlessly moving into my next questions I want to ask you. It's a beautiful thing.
It's like we rehearsed this or something. This is great.
Right? I know, it's wonderful. No, so I mean, you've talked about some great technologies that are underutilized in higher education. Is there anything else that jumps out at you? I mean, you're talking about cloud computing and things like that. Is there anything else that you feel like we could be doing more with or doing better with?
I think that we can jump on the latest fad. I've seen my colleague Jeff at Render, and he's done some cool stuff with how Periscope might be used on a campus visit experience remotely. I mean, there's some cool things that are out there, and those are fun to play with. But I think we still need to go back to the tried and true ways that we're recruiting students and question which are most effective. I mean, again, I'm looking at some of these mailings, and I know we do it. And I brought this down here. I went up to my daughter's room. I said, "I'm grabbing your mail, by the way." and I looked at these, and look how she opens them. I mean, she doesn't get too much mail. She just rips them open. But they all look the same. I mean, is this really working? Is this working? And are we measuring that? I'd like to see more colleges measure the effectiveness of that. I'd like to see them get a better handle on their social campaigns. And I think we just have to look at our communication plans and go, what's working and what's not. And I think that also changes the type of staffing that you need too. And I think we all have to every year decide, do we have the right people on the team and do we have them in the right seats? And it's okay to move folks around. And I think that's going to be helpful. I have yet to use the word sales in this conversation today, other than Salesforce. But again, training is critically important, whether it's the tools we're using or the techniques that we're using in effective ways, not bad ways, and understand that we can continually adjust and improve. I see summertime for every admissions office as great opportunities to do that. I think the other part to your question, you were using the word enrollment, so I guess I'll jump into the retention side just a little bit.
Sure.
Relate it back to recruitment is that I think that there's data and there's information that we can gather from the recruitment process that's going to help us better improve our retention rates as well. And I don't think we use that enough. I was working with a very selective institution a few years ago where 20% of their incoming class, the students said that this institution they were enrolling in was their 7th or higher choice school. So translated, 20% of the incoming class wanted to go to 7 other or more institutions before this one. Like, they're not even interested in going to school, but they're enrolling anyways. To me, that's an opportunity to use that cohort group and engage them to try and keep them there for the 4 years. I don't think we use enough of the information that the admissions office is collecting in the student success side of the shop, but that's improving. We're obviously seeing more of that. We're seeing more people own retention. Whereas the question always was, well, who owns retention on a campus? Is it the academic side? Is it the administrative side? Student life? Who is it? We don't know who it is. Obviously, the president, he or she took hold of it and went with it and owned it, but one of many things they have to deal with. Now we're starting to see more coordination in that regard. So I'm really pleased by that. And I think the other side, which isn't a technology, even though it can be added to it, is just the campus visit experience. I know there's a technology in recruiting, but again, back to the idea you and I were talking about earlier of the institutional DNA. The best way to show that institutional DNA is to tell stories and engage with people, and a lot of that happens on the campus visit. Render Experiences was started as a TargetX department and split off into its own company a couple of years ago. And Render and I have to disclose, my wife works for Render. Adrian works for Render, and she was part of the ones that the team that helped build that at TargetX years ago. And I just really like what they're doing. But there's also some technology uses there as well. How do you sign up? How do you check in? But from there on, it's the story. And we can't hammer that one enough, is that use the technology, try the new things, be efficient, keep your data in one place. But if you aren't telling your story, and by the way, if you don't know what your story is, that's a bigger problem. We got to work on that. What makes you unique, what makes you an interesting institution, why as a 16, 17, 18-year-old should I even care to read your mail or to read your email or to go up to you at a table or whatever it may be. That's still going to reign as king in this process, but we can become more efficient and use technology better too.
Yeah. Well, and you're making me think of this term that I heard a few years ago, and I try to have it stick with me, is the whole lifetime engagement cycle. Not just recruiting, but really thinking of them as already kind of being a student that could fit at your institution. We talk all the time about fit, but do we really understand the bigger implication it has on not just recruitment, but retention and of happy graduates and of engaged alumni? If you're thinking of it in that longer span of time, you may approach recruitment very, very differently. I mean, I think recruitment's taken a weird sort of turn, even in the years that I've been in it, where I think sometimes institutions get so wrapped up in the numbers that they forget we want these students to come here and to be happy and to be engaged, happy students and engaged, happy alumni. And so I think what you were saying about storytelling and about telling authentic stories that really actually get into, once again, that institutional DNA, if you're using that in your recruitment and any work that you do as an admissions office, that's going to pay off in better dividends in the long run for your institution as a whole.
Yeah, and I think with technology today, we can tell stories that are customized for those students too. We know what their interests are. We know what their likelihood or not likelihood to enroll at that institution. We know where they're from. We can connect them with other people. We do have technology to be able to do that. Simple things of conditional content, emails or websites, even print. I see some actually not cheesy yet effective uses of variable printing that I think could be very effective. I think the thing is that we need to have those stories, and then we just need to tailor them to the students at the right time, the right message at the right time, and not just one message fits all. That won't work either. I still see a lot of that, unfortunately, but embracing those technologies and understanding the student, collecting the data, using that data to make different decisions and different types of engagement is going to be pretty effective.
Absolutely. Before I get to the next question, just want to remind viewers, if you do have any questions or anything, don't forget to use HireEdLive as a hashtag. By the way, one of the viewers mentioned that even though she is a millennial, she has heard of tape loads. So you're not dating yourself too much there talking about that. But, okay. You addressed this a little bit earlier, but just to quickly kind of cover, do you feel like there's lingering questions or concerns that institutions may have regarding use of technology? I mean, you talked a little bit about that concern of kind of how our data is protected when it comes to cloud computing, but do you feel like there's anything else that might be standing in the way as questions for institutions to make these bigger leaps?
Well, cost is always one, but I think if they looked at what they're spending already on the varied, the 20 different solutions that one institution listed, which by the way is not abnormal, I've learned, pretty common, that improving that technology platform and becoming more efficient, without even counting the efficiencies that will be gained with the staff. I think even just looking at what they spend on the different tools will get close to something that's a little more modern and accessible. I'm fascinated by how many recruiters still don't have access to their data. One of my favorite stories, by the way, was very early on in our CRM space. I was collecting stories from our early adopter clients. And we had, one of our clients had been at a college fair, and it was in the spring. And he came back and he told me that he had a student come up to him at the table, and he said, "I haven't heard back from you guys about my application, so I'm kind of curious." And he was able to pull his iPhone out, logged into the CRM quickly, and he said, "Oh, well, it looks like we're just missing I guess it was your application fee." And the student's like, "Oh yeah, I forgot. I guess I need to get mom and dad to send that in or something." And he said, "Yeah, or you can pay it online." And he continues to strike up this conversation with the student. And this recruiter was given the ability to waive that application fee. I mean, seriously, the students completed everything, took the time to come up to the table. He's clearly interested in this place. Why would you let a $20 or whatever it is application fee get in the way? And the recruiter was able to waive the application fee right there, which turned the student right into a ready to be reviewed applicant. And the student receives an email automatically that says your application is now complete and will be going to review. Thank you for submitting it. Right there while they're standing at the table, this is all happening. That is the way it should be. Now, whether recruiters should be able to do that on their own, that's an institutional, policy and all. But I love the ability that you can just wow that student with that type of reaction and that type of engagement and action. You know, we don't have to run it through all the paper steps and all that. I think the other thing that colleges a lot of concern with, a lot of work that we do, is the idea of user adoption. And, you know, any type of change in an admissions office can be challenging. It all depends on, you know, obviously the longevity of the team that's been there and what they're used to. I've seen schools that they've gotten the counselors 2 monitors, one for their ERP and one for their CRM. And I always ask the question, why? Why do they need both of these? First of all, why are they still going into the ERP? Well, because they're used to that. And I said, okay, you need to get rid of that second monitor because you want them doing certain things. But to do it, you have to get them to buy into, why is this good for them? Forget about the students for the moment, though that's the part in my mind is most important. What's most important at that time is that user adoption, using the tools. Why do you need to enter certain types of data in? What can you use that for, and how can you see success in your job there? That's user adoption. And, you know, keeping those folks involved in the selection process of those technologies, keeping them involved in obviously training, but also understanding what are their pain points. You know, we talk about institutional pain points and enrollment director pain points, but line workers, what is their pain point? Well, there's 10 different screens I have to go into to, you know, enter an application. Well, we can streamline that. Great, let's do this. Let's make your job easier. Because if your job's easier, you're going to be happy. You're going to stick around. Now we have to hire somebody again and train them too. Retention of our staff is important too, because we all know they're the highly paid people that, you know, yeah, we're all making a lot of money in admissions, right? But no, they're wonderful people, and I think that you know, we can help them along with the technology. We just have to keep them engaged in it, give them the training they need, and help them with their pain points. And I think that's user adoption comes up a lot in our conversations, and I think the more we can improve that, the happier their lives are going to be too. In the end, I think we work in higher education and we work in admissions because we love working with young adults and helping them succeed. We love seeing them graduate, and, you know, the whole point of that student experience, that student journey, that's the most important thing that I think drives many of us that work in this industry. And if we can have the tools to make that go even smoother, that's even better.
Absolutely. I'm just sitting here nodding my head to everything you're saying. You're hitting the nail on the head. And I love that story you shared about that college fair, because that's technology done right. That's being able to immediately use technology to make that change to help that student enroll. And I love that story. But as an admission counselor, what you were saying about getting your constituents all, you know, kind of happy with their technology and moving in the same direction rings true too.
Sure.
So as we're kind of nearing an end, I do want to ask you, what big changes do you see kind of coming down the road that might be most specifically impacting recruitment, both in the technology world and not, but I guess more specifically talking about this topic? What are some of the big things coming down the road, you think?
I don't know. I mean, I knew what the big thing was. We're probably having a different conversation. I think that that focus still on mobile. You're going to see the social admissions report come out of Chegg and TargetX soon. And a big focus on the research we did with Chegg this year was on the use of mobile devices, mobile apps, obviously mobile responsive websites, social networks on mobile. I mean, Facebook does more traffic on their mobile than anything else anymore. I mean, that has completely changed our experiences. And what does that mean to higher education? One of the challenges I'm foreseeing is that enrolled student and how many different apps and sites and views and looks and that experience that they have is all over the place. And I think we now have an opportunity to think about how to streamline that. Your inquiry form to your event registration, to your online application, to your deposit form, to whatever app they're going to give you when you enroll, to all of these things are so different experiences for a student today. And there's an opportunity to bring that all together into one seamless experience. And that's a word I'd like to hear us more using, by the way, is experience. Because I think that's, if we stop thinking of ourselves as an institution and acting like the siloed institutions that we are and start thinking about the student and their experience and their journey, that's going to change the way that we deploy these technologies. So I think that's what's coming next. I don't know if that's a big thing. It will be a big thing in terms of how the students experience it, but it definitely is something that we've got our work cut out for us in this industry.
I completely agree. And yeah, I guess it was an unfair way to word the question to essentially have you predict the future, but I do think things
Levitating
like
students are on campus. They don't have to work anymore. So we can
I love it.
hover around.
But yeah, I mean, mobile is definitely a big one. And your mention of experience, I encourage anybody out there, especially that's really invested in this as in the world of admissions, to just learn basics of user experience. I found fascinating. I started to dig into it the other day, and I spent like 2 hours just really understanding how user experience is approached just on kind of layman's terms.
Yep.
And I think I can already see its implications and the ways that I can kind of incorporate it into the work I do in admissions. So I love that you shared that.
A great book to read is The Design of Everyday Things. This book's been around for decades, and the gentleman that wrote it, off the top of my head, I can't remember his name. He spends a lot of time on doorknobs and signs on doors. He's fascinating that if we have to put a push or pull sign on a door, we haven't designed the door right. If you can start to look at that, that'll change your thinking about user experience. The things are designed to make our life easier, and if we have to give instructions, we haven't designed it well enough.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And so kind of just ending on one last kind of bigger question, but what do you suggest, so say an institution is watching this episode of Higher Ed Live and thinking, okay, well, we really want to start to be more efficient. What are some good steps in kind of the short term that an institution can take to start moving down this road of being more efficient, of working better for their constituents?
Yep. Yeah, we worked with Western Connecticut is one of our clients, and they had the same question when they began their search for a CRM, actually before they even hired TargetX. They mapped out every different touch point from when a student says, I'm interested, all the way out to when the student, I think even they took it out to when the student graduates. And it's this huge map. I mean, it's fascinating to look at because you have to zoom in really close to even just see the little pieces. But their IT staff and their enrollment staff decided to map it out because they didn't know where the inefficiencies were. I think that's the first place. What do we do? Have we actually mapped all these pieces out? And don't just look at it as we send this mailing. What goes into sending that mailing? Or this email campaign, we're going to send it 3 times. What goes into that? How do we make the selection? How do we write it? How do we approve it? How do we send it? Does anybody review the data afterward? What about our Facebook page? Who owns it? How often are things posted to it? What type of interactions are we having? Are we doing any ads? We don't spend enough time on that. Summertime's a great time to do that. So I'll give everybody homework for the summer, I guess, is to actually assess what are they doing and what's most effective. I worked with an institution who launched a fast app many years ago. They ended up on the in the New York Times a couple of years ago afterwards, saying that they had abandoned this idea, and they found out they had so many applications come in through this fast app because they had to increase their application numbers. They couldn't even process them. But they were so excited how many they had. And unfortunately, there was one associate director in the room who said, yeah, but I'm a little worried going out in the fall and all these admissions or guidance counselors are going to be pretty upset with me that their students applied and they never heard from us because we couldn't even process them. Then we went through the discussion and I got to the end of it and they asked me if I had any questions. I said, I just have one question. This was like end of August. I said, what's enrollment like this fall? And the director said, we're down 5 students. I said, you spent all of this money, I won't talk about which firm they use, but all of this money to do this fast app. You've probably ticked off a lot of guidance counselors, certainly a lot of students and their parents who never heard from you, and you're down in enrollment? Like, how did that work? And the CFO was sitting next to me. I just wanted to put my hand around him and I didn't, but I thought about it like, so who in this room is getting fired from this decision? And the poor guy, he just looks at me and I remember just putting his head on his forehead, just shaking his head. That is, and they looked at it and they said, you're right, this isn't making sense. This is not effective and we're spending a lot of money doing it. We've got to measure what we're doing and we have to make tough choices and saying, this doesn't work. Everybody does it. I hear it. Everybody's doing this. So we have to do it. No, the schools that are successful, the ones that go, we know it doesn't work. So we're going to stop doing it. And that takes guts, gumption, if you will, for an admissions staff to make those kinds of changes. But we're there. We're at that point where we have more technologies and more successful engagement tools and techniques that we can be utilizing. We can't just add another tool. We've got to think about the ones that aren't working and get rid of them.
Oh, That's such great advice. And oh, my lights went off on me. There we go. There we go. That's better. No, you really hit the nail on the head there. And I think it's so fascinating to really look big picture at that, because it just makes me think of that whole idea of the admissions funnel has just gone completely off the rails as far as that traditional funnel as we knew it. And it just sort of links back to what you said before. It's, we can throw all these things at trying to make it better and trying to recruit more students. But in the end, if you're not looking at what actually works and you're just throwing things at the problem, you're not going to ultimately get to the solution you want. So
that's right.
It's so fascinating to share. And I think that's great advice for institutions that are thinking carefully about this. And the summertime, I feel like the summertime has still gotten busy as much as all the other seasons have, but even that is kind of a bigger symptom of the larger issue, I think, too.
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you. That's really great advice, and I hope a lot of viewers and others that check this out take that to heart. So, thank you so much, Brian. Any last words of knowledge or wisdom or anything you want to leave our viewers with?
I've always said that, as you said, that we've got overlapping activities happening now, and it doesn't stop at May 1. It goes throughout the summertime for many institutions. I get that, and it can get overwhelming. And I joked about this is such a highly paid profession. I mean, it isn't. I get it. This is not. But it's a great job for those, particularly in their 20s, start out. And if you want to make it a profession, it can be a wonderful long-term profession. It certainly has for me. And I think that always remember why you do what you do. And then go do that. I remember very early in my career, it seemed like I realized this just wasn't what I want to be doing. I was starting to see, behind the curtain at my undergrad institution. I was now working there and seeing how an institution actually runs, and wasn't happy about some of the things there at the time because they were new to me. And I remember the director that hired me, he said, well, why are you doing this? And I said, it's for the students. I mean, I want to bring really talented students back to this institution where I experienced it as well. And he said, well, go do that. And the next day I went and I sat in the dining hall and had lunch with the students that I had recruited the previous year, and reconnected and realized, okay, I've got to get out of my office more often and spend more time with the students here, because that's why I do this. So, and it's different for everybody. So my advice is go find that bit of work, whether it's in higher education or you leave higher ed and you do something else. I think in any career, make sure you know why you're doing it, and then make sure you're regularly doing that, because that's what's going to be satisfying.
That is fantastic advice. Thank you so much. That's such a nice note to end this show on. Thank you again for being on today, and I hope viewers get to reach out to you and to TargetX and to learn a little bit more about what you're doing. And I hope more people check out your book. I think, like you said, well, it may be dating back to, I think it's 2009. There's so many things that ring true today. I mean, the deeper concepts of knowing that institutional DNA and talking about storytelling is something that I think we talked about today and rings true no matter what. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you to our viewers, of course, as well. Very happy to have you here for another episode. And we will be back on Monday, March 7th. But first, I want to say thank you as well to our program sponsors, Chegg and M. Stoner. So Admissions Live will be returning on Monday, March 7th for a broadcast we're calling The Relationship Dynamic with host Chris Dorso and guest Bob Longmire and Rick Montgomery. I'll be back March 21st with Grace Hartman and the good folks at Guidebook to talk more about technology and recruitment. Once again, one of my favorite topics. But this time it will be all about campus tour apps. Stay up to date with upcoming episodes from Higher Ed Pros by subscribing to the newsletter at higheredlive.com. Thanks, everybody.